when this really crappy PC came along that had the very first kind of embryo of a lot of the programs that are around today. It just seemed like, oh my god, this is possible.
The retail joystick made an improvement, but a real aircraft environment and genuine flight controls would bring the PC pilot several steps closer to the perfect virtual flight.
There's obviously lots of different types of software you can use, and then you'll need something that'll interface the software to the cockpit. So you've got your computer, your cockpit, and your software, and then you've got to get all those things talking to each other.
That dialogue was made possible by circuit boards like the EPIC card. These allow the user to connect over 500 knobs and switches from the real world into the virtual world.
I got one of the early EPIC cards, which worked fine with the software that it came with for Flight Simulator when it was running under DOS. That's the basic operating system, not Windows as we know now. But when Flight Simulator moved to running under Windows, this all collapsed. All the software we had for driving EPIC and the hardware under DOS just didn't work. Being a programmer already, I investigated how to write the program drivers for Windows and wrote the drivers for EPIC.
Enable one computer to talk to another computer and transfer data between the systems, and that's very important because in that way you can have an instrument display provided by one computer, a different, perhaps a flight management computer provided by a second machine, and then you can have your external video display on your main machine, the fastest machine, and these utilities enable the computers to talk to one another and run the whole thing very smoothly.
The visual display in a commercial simulator is projected directly onto a system of concave mirrors within a dome. This immerses the pilot into 180 degrees of almost photorealistic graphics. For Romek Delamata, whose simulator sits in a porter cabin at Dublin Docks, this level of visual realism was essential, no matter what the cost.
It's amazing, every time you look at something it seems like a simple thing in this, anything to do with this, anything to do with aircraft, it's always just 20 times more expensive than you think it's going to be. I've got collimated visuals, which is with what those concave mirrors, those parabolic mirrors are. One of those parabolic mirrors, if you wanted to buy it new, would cost you $22,000. It always has to be that particular bit, otherwise it's just not going to work. Well, depending on how nerdy you are, I mean, if you're as nerdy as I am, then it's got to be exactly that bit.
Aviation parts, whether for simulators or aircraft themselves, are always expensive. As well as their astronomical development costs, they are precision-made using high-quality materials. Kevin Saker is more down to earth. He just nips down to the local DIY store.
You can buy wood, plywood, marine ply. You can buy sheet aluminium in various thicknesses, which is very easy to work. People might think not, but all you need is a straight edge and a craft knife, and you can score on the aluminium and then bend it and break it.
The test bed for Kevin's hand-built pedals is in the garden, next to the flower bed. His instrument panel consists of 3 computer monitors, each displaying its own data. Aircraft heading, attitude, altitude and rate of descent are just some of the outputs feeding directly off the game. For authenticity, the monitors are hidden behind a piece of sheet metal. And for the yoke, the main flying control, Kevin visits a plumber's.
If you're intent on making just one yoke or one pair of yokes, get some copper piping and using a pipe bender, bend the shape of the yoke initially. That gives the yoke the strength it requires. It's like a chassis. And then if you buy some ordinary car body filler, mix it up in small amounts, and then using a spatula you just cover the copper tubing in this car body filler, and then when it's set you get some sandpaper or glass paper and a sanding block, and you just start sanding it down, sanding it away, and you find that you actually sand away probably 50% or more of it, but you end up with a very smooth surface on the outside of the copper pipe.
But if DIY is not your thing, and a box room seems a little cramped, the best place to be is America, where aircraft parts and space are readily available. Matt Ford, an award-winning Hollywood lighting director, simply cut the front off a real plane.
Well, I decided to go with a real cockpit just for me, simulation or flight simulation is creating the most realistic environment possible for the end user. And in many aspects, starting with a real cockpit is much easier than starting from scratch. For instance, the throttle quadrant, the control linkages, all of those things would be very, very expensive and very, very time consuming to create from scratch. It was not a situation where I would have parts, say, out of a DC-9 throttle quadrant with a Boeing 747 yoke. Everything is in the type of airplane that I wanted, which is a Boeing 737. So that was the best solution, I think.
Matt's simulator is work in progress. One of the most important tasks is bringing the controls and the software together.
What I'm doing is adding the flight controls into the program. So you go through a calibration routine and set various parameters. So like right now, this is what the computer is reading for roll. And it's so that the blue line represents the neutral position of the control, and then the yellow line represents the minimum and maximum deflection of that particular control. So that I know that control is working fine. I know rudder's working okay, but for some reason it's not doing it on the pitch. It's quite interesting in the neighborhood when I lift the garage door up and people walk by or they drive by. They're very some people just kind of cruise on by. Other people will sort of slow down and look in.
With their more benign lawnmowers and sprinklers in the garage, the neighbours find it difficult to understand Matt's obsession.
I think it's insane. I think it's really weird, but he knows that. You know, we're the neighbours, we think it's weird. It makes lots of noise. And we don't understand. We don't really get the whole flight thing. But, you know, he likes it. And there could be worse hobbies.
I could be running a meth lab in the garage.
You could be, and for all we know, you probably are. Oh, that's what I said!
The main thing that makes it a game is the way that you interface with the game. So if you've got a small fiddly joystick and a keyboard, you're not going to get a very realistic experience of what it's like to fly an airplane. But if you've got a complete cockpit and multiple views and wraparound visuals and a motion platform, you can be running the same software, which is a game, and be learning enough to be able to go and fly a real aircraft.